This video speaks to due diligence for workplace health safety. Speaks to the level of judgment, care, prudence, determination, and activity that a person would reasonably be expected to do under particular circumstances. Due diligence is demonstrated by your actions before an event occurs, not after. Applied to occupational health and safety, due diligence means that employers shall take all reasonable precautions under the particular circumstances to prevent injuries or accidents in the workplace. This duty also applies to situations that are not addressed elsewhere in the occupational health and safety legislation. To exercise due diligence, an employer must implement a plan to identify possible workplace hazards and carry out the appropriate corrective action to prevent accidents or injuries from arising from these hazards. Also to be considered are legal liabilities. To establish due diligence, the employer must have an in-place written operating health safety policies, practice, and procedures. These policies would demonstrate and document that the employer carried out workplace safety audits, identified hazardous practices and hazardous conditions that made necessary changes to correct these conditions, and provided employees with information to enable them to work safely. The employer must provide the appropriate training and education to the employees so that they understand and carry out their work according to the established policies, practices, and procedures. The employer must train the supervisors to ensure that they are competent persons as defined in the legislation. The employer must monitor the workplace and ensure that employees are following the policies, practices, and procedures. Written documentation of progressive disciplining for breaches of safety rules is considered due diligence. To demonstrate that the employer has established due diligence, they must establish an OSH program, include emergency planning, implement hazard control, provide a guide to writing an OHS policy statement, provide inspection checklists, and do job hazard analysis. Office ergonomics for workplace health safety. Office ergonomics speaks to problems and injuries related to the use of computers and other office equipment. Explained as work-related musculoskeletal disorders, ergonomic risk stages of WMSD, applying ergonomics to components of the office environment and the workstation, and the worker and suggested exercises. Office ergonomics will allow a worker to recognize the early signs of discomfort that can arise while working with office equipment, learn the factors responsible for such discomfort, and participate in assessing, controlling, and preventing ergonomic problems and injuries. Confined spaces for workplace health safety. Confined spaces speaks to work areas that are considered confined because their configurations hinder the activities of employees who must enter, work in, and exit them. A confined space is limited or restricted means for entry or exit, and it is not designed for continuous employee occupation. Confined spaces include, but are not limited to, underground vaults, tanks, storage bins, manholes, pits, silos, process vessels, and pipelines. OSHA uses the term permit required confined space to describe a confined space that has one or more of the following characteristics, or has the potential to contain a hazardous atmosphere, contains a material that has the potential to engulf an entrant, has walls that converge inwards, or floors that are slipped downwards and taper into a smaller area which could trap or asphyxiate an entrant, or contains any other recognized safety or health hazard, such as unguarded machinery, exposed live wires, or heat stress. And last but not least is violence in the workplace. Violence in the workplace speaks to the right that everyone should be able to work without fear of violence or harassment in a safe and healthy workplace. Workplace violence is any act in which a person is abused, threatened, intimidated, or assaulted in his or her employment. Workplace violence may include threatening behavior such as shaking fists, destroying property, or throwing objects. Verbal or written threats, which can be any expression of an intent to inflict harm. Harassment, which may be any behavior that demeans, embarrasses, humiliates, annoys, alarms, or verbally abuses a person, and that is known or be expected to be unwelcome. This includes words, gestures, intimidation, bullying, or other inappropriate activities. Verbal abuse, which includes swearing, insults, or condescending language. Physical attacks, such as hitting, shoving, pushing, or kicking. Rumors, swearing, verbal abuse, pranks, argument, property damage, vandalism. Sabotage, pushing, theft, physical assaults, psychological trauma, anger-related incidents, rape, arson, and murder are all examples of workplace violence. Thank you for listening. Bye now.